Hello and welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage, evening edition. I have been picking away at customizing my Woodward Fab Super Bead roller. Super Bead is what it's called. I first saw it advertised 3 or 4 years ago. I've been curious about it. I have 2 other videos. One saying goodbye to my nice bead roller that took 3/4 dies that I didn't have any of. Second, when this arrived and I put it together and talked about it a little bit, and this will be part 3, I guess, where I've done some customizing to it, and I have a few impressions of using it. So here we go. In the pictures, when I was studying it, and I gotta go back and find the old ads. I haven't even looked in the catalog yet. Excuse me for rummaging through my stuff. Each box came with a catalog. And Woodward Fab says it was founded in 1947 as Royal Tool and Die in Detroit, hence the name Woodward. So at one point they made American-made stuff, and now they pretty much sell imported stuff. I think they still make some of their original duplication machines and stuff like that. The history's all in there, and I like history, so while the product may be imported, hopefully it's an American company and the profiting is happening over here. Got a light flickering over there. So in the original ads, when I saw it advertised, because I just done a 1/2-inch plate bead roller and welded reinforcement on it, and this one was promised to not flex because it's 5/8 thick. It's a lot better quality than the cheapest bead roller you could buy. But it's still, the naked bead roller itself, without all the other junk, is still under $250, which is pretty reasonable for what you get. But in the pictures, originally, it looked like it had this really sweet T-handle to raise and lower the upper die. In reality, when it gets here, there was a round piece with a hole in it where that bolt is now, and it just had this Allen head bolt with a nut stuck on it. It's sloppy and loose, and it's just not fancy, so I obviously motorized it, so I didn't need the hand crank it came with. I got a couple others of these, but I decided I like this handle the best, so I just cut it in half, found a piece of round tubing, drilled a hole in it, welded it all together, touched up the paint. And now I have a nice handle that works pretty slick, and it was almost free, if you will. So that's an improvement. I haven't ever tried the bead rollers with the big table that would go on both sides and all the way out around, because when I did the other ones, and I had several pieces of this aluminum channel, which somebody's going to ask me the size. I don't have a tape measure on me. That's rare. And it's just so handy to have something to rest the work on while you steer it. And you really don't need anything bigger than that. And it takes up less space, if you will. So it's 6 inches by 3 inches. And it's at least, it's 3/8 of an inch thick. So it's nice and rugged. If you have OCD, don't look at my engine turning. I just had a wire wheel and I went around it, no particular pattern. But it had been sitting right under the mill. There's a couple other ones sitting there. And it's all covered with the black mung that ends up in your shop if you do any amount of work. When you see these beautiful man caves with cars parked in them and stuff, they don't do any work there. You really need 2 shops. One for that. You know, I'd love to have something I could just put nice stuff in and it would stay nice. And one where you make a mess, which this is what this one's all about. So the table, I had to space it off to clear the shafts and the rollers, and it's at approximately half height. I like it slightly lower than half so the work actually goes uphill a little bit. You don't want it going downhill, it would bend the piece. And rolls come in various sizes, so if I set it exactly centered on one, it isn't necessarily going to be that way. So I like to be down a little bit from center. I don't know what's right, I know it works good. The table itself, if you can call it a table, I like that. I have to improve, this is just a wire tie I got hanging. The foot switch, which I can't say enough for the drive system so far. I did a little research. This is half horsepower. They claim it's an industrial motor. My other bead roller was 1/16 horsepower, and it worked just fine. This is half horse. It's super quiet, variable on the foot pedal. So far, so good. Just the drive system was $450, a major part of the whole cost of the bead roller, but there's no going back once you get rid of the hand crank. The hand crank's fine if you got two people and somebody you trust turning the crank. So much more controllable. It's not even the same experience. But I just have a wire tie on this hook right here right now because I was sitting the foot pedal up here, and every time I move it would fall on the floor, and I don't want to break it. So I think I'm going to get a piece of leather shoelace there. I was going to put like a round keychain on it, but I don't want it, you know, rocking on the floor, so a piece of shoelace wouldn't hurt anything. So I don't trust that wire tie to not fail and let it fall on the floor again. So that was easy enough to do. I spent about an hour drilling and tapping 5/16 holes. I ran these here. The pins in the back, and I'll show you all the dies I now have in a minute. These are the ones that came with the machine. 3 rolls, 3 steps, and the shearing die. And I wanted room for expansion. Sometimes you just change the stuff around and you want a place to set it. You can set it on the table. And I usually leave this magnetic tray. I had it stuck over here. It came with, between the drive motor and the bead roller, it came with a Allen head wrenches that fit it. The problem with that is they're so cheap, like the one that holds the die on, I was able to twist it right off. So they're certainly not quality tools, but the bigger ones, I mean, I guess if I twist this off, I'm really doing something, but I'm about to show you in a minute that I am apparently so strong I can flex this whole bead roller. So we're going over the good right now. We're going to get to the bad and the ugly. So the depth stop came today, 3 days behind everything else. 2 days behind everything else, let's be honest. Monday, Wednesday. The one I built for my other bead rollers was 2 pieces. It located in the opening, and when you backed off the T-handle on the back, you could just split it in half and it would fall right out. This installation required taking the bearing blocks off, the dies off, my table back off, just to get it in there, and you lose at least 1.5 inches of depth with this in place. So if you were to do wide stuff, you'd have to plan ahead. I don't typically do anything that wide, at least I never have, but I might someday, and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Back to the table for a minute. I stuck it out that way as far as possible because I plan on extending the shafts a little bit to get some more depth, or at least having the extensions available if I had to do something deep. Most of the time, I'd probably run it like this. So I set the table offset a little bit. We'll take a quick walk around. Again, here's my table. This particular set of dies here leaves a little step if you want to indent a panel. These are really cool. I have other steps that are more pronounced, but I kind of like these. They just arrived today. I Loctited this one slightly loose. This bolt that holds this bearing block, bushing block, so it'll go up and down. If you tighten that right up, obviously it won't move, but you don't want it loose and having the shaft jumping around. This is the adjustment knob for the depth stop. Unfortunately, it runs right into my cool sticker that I liked. So it won't be long before there's dents all along the paint, because the paint is cheap and it's going to put holes in the decal, but big deal. So these are the dies that I got. I have more rolls. I kind of like this style bead roll better. I have the skateboard wheel, they call it. A few tip over dies. I'm pointing, but you can't see me. And the ones here with the numbers, the 5/16, half inch, 1.5 inches, are end rolls, sometimes called tank rolls. or fender roll, so you can roll the edge of a piece, or a sheet, I should say, of steel or aluminum. I have high hopes that the drive unit was probably the best part of the purchase. So far it's been flawless installation and use so far. Same with the foot switch. While it is imported, it seems like good quality. Time will tell. Okay, now for the bad, or at least not so good. The 1/2-inch plate bead rollers. Everybody welds steel in a U-shaped all the way around, or builds a big truss somehow to prevent this from flexing. This one, they bragged, because it's 5/8, that's not required, hence the super bead and a few other features. They said they listened to all the complaints and they fixed it. Did they? Hang on, let me change the camera angle. So I have you as close up as possible. This is me one-handed, even with my hand blocked by the table. I'm flexing at 1/4 inch. I'm moving 5/8 steel with one finger. It's kind of expected on one hand, sadly, and disheartening on the other, that I was hoping to low buck my way into a decent bead roller. Low buck is a relative term, because with all the dies I've bought and the improvements, I got $1,200 into it. That is also just the gateway into a professional bead roller with no dies or one die set that comes with it. So you would have twice that, almost, into a similar setup in a nice unit. So bear that in mind. Sitting here thinking about it, I've had buyer's remorse since the time I bought it, and I'll fix it and make it work. And whether I keep it, who knows? I will build either a bolt-on truss for the back, or use all these parts to make a nice one. Again, I didn't want a project, another project, which is rare for me. I mean, it's been enough of a project, just modifying a little bit. On that note, I like to, when I get something new, if I don't dedicate the time, as soon as it comes in the door and I push it off to the side, you know what happens next. The best intentions don't always play out. Now I've only spent 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7 beads with it, and with the supplied dies, I didn't notice the flex at first. This is 18 gauge steel, and while the profile isn't the greatest, it was no problem. The motor is super strong. Then I broke out one of the new bead roller dies, the one that just has, you know, it's just the bulge by itself and the receiver on the bottom. And I put, you know, a 1.5 turns of tension in it. I noticed it was jumping. There's actual skid marks in there where I could watch the frame doing what I just did with my hand. I'm like, oh boy. And that's when I just grabbed it and moved it one-handed, because it has flex. A simple fix, and I've seen people do this, is drill and tap a few holes in the back, and when you're not using the full depth, just bolt a strap in there. That's a quick fix. And you could have multiple hole sets and only one strap and just keep moving the strap. You're never going to notice it in aluminum. You can run capacity on the aluminum and it's not going to bother. You have to be the 18 gauge steel, and it's going to depend on the style of the die. And again, with a 1/2 inch plate bead roller, it's definitely more pronounced. And even that isn't the end of the world, because on the side that would show, it's really not that bad. It's just, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I'm sad, but it's my own fault, because I tried to low buck the whole program. So that's that. It is what it is. I haven't even played with all the dies yet. It's kind of like me practicing TIG welding. I hate to waste metal doing it. So when I get scrap like this was a piece of a floorboard that never got finished. I've used it for cutting and everything else, but in this case, I will continue. I've used practicing on my English wheel. It's just a hunk of scrap, and I'll play around with all the dies just to get used to them. And again, I'm not doing artwork. I'm not selling my work to people. I'm no worse off than I was. I'm actually better off with the amount of dies that I have, and the majority of the time I wouldn't uncover this flaw, but if you're shopping and faced with the same decisions when you start adding everything up, again, I'm halfway to a good one. Do you want to go all in and then just be happy forever? The resale value would be higher. There's lots of reasons to do it. I wish there's a niche in the market that is not fulfilled, is a large framed bead roller with sufficient depth, 24 or 36 inch, with the bigger shafts that take the cheaper dies. That's what everybody does. They take this or the cheaper one, they build themselves a big frame, and they still run the inexpensive dies or much more affordable dies. All the black ones on the back that I showed you, I got one more die that I bought that's not here yet, but those two, the two sets were 80 bucks a piece. That's pretty incredible, and they're nice quality. I'm sure they're imported, well, no question, because the instructions look like something that would have come with the bead roller. And at least they give you some indication of how to use them. I haven't even read this yet, but it's definitely imported. But I was immediately pressed when I was wiping all the oil off them, because they're all oiled and in bags, that they were actually pretty nice for cheap money. That's 7 or 8 dies in each box, you know, pairs. So that's cheap money. Anyway, once again, enough about bead rollers. This is probably the end. I don't know. I'm sure someday if I do build some bolt-on truss, I really don't want to take it apart to weld it, but it might have got plenty of steel. We'll see. It's not that big a deal to strip it down either. So for now, I think I'm done with it, and I just wanted to catch you up on what I found. Have a good evening.